Well, joining me live on his birthday is the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers. First of all, happy birthday to you. I'm so honoured that you've given up some time on your birthday for us, Treasurer.
What better way to spend your birthday morning than with Andrew Clennell on Sky? It's very kind of you, Andrew. Happy birthday to the Prime Minister as well.
Yeah, that's right. He is. He's a little bit older than you, though. Thanks for coming on and happy birthday to the PM, who always watches Sunday Agenda. Can you confirm it's looking more likely that you'll be delivering a budget on March 25 now?
Oh, look, right throughout, Andrew, we've made it clear that we've continued the budget preparations. We are working towards a budget towards the end of March. We obviously understand, acknowledge and recognise that the timing of the election is a decision for the Prime Minister in consultation with us as his senior colleagues, but we've been meeting the Expenditure Review Committee, putting a budget together on that expectation.
Well, what's he told you? Has he told you it's more likely May now?
Well, I think obviously even on my birthday, Andrew, in a very charitable mood, I'm not going to go into the private conversations that I have with the Prime Minister and with the senior colleagues in the Cabinet. The Prime Minister will make a decision about the timing of the election. I'm not going to get into all of the hypotheticals. My job is to work closely with Katie Gallagher and the Expenditure Review Committee to put the budget together, and that's what we're doing. And if people are looking for hints about a fourth budget from this government, the hints are in the first three. It will be defined by responsible economic management. We'll help with the cost of living where we can do that in an affordable way. We'll keep fighting inflation. We'll keep trying to make our economy more productive and dynamic, and we'll build Australia's future. And that's where the contrast really lies. If you want to talk about economic policies, the contrast is between us getting inflation down, getting wages up, keeping unemployment low, paying down Liberal debt, and starting to see those interest rates come down, versus Peter Dutton and the Liberals, who would make people worse off and take Australia backwards.
Because, as you well know, being your birthday, it is March 2nd, a budget scheduled for March 25. Isn't it about time that we knew if there's a budget or not? Is there an actual budget document that's been drawn up? When would that budget be sent to the printers? What's the kind of timeline on that, Treasurer?
Ordinarily, in the end of the week before a budget, it would be printed, depending on which budget document you're referring to. Let's not get into the weeds of the printing schedule of the budget. We're putting a budget together in the usual way for the end of March. The Prime Minister will make a decision on the timing of the election in due course. My job isn't to focus on that. My job is to work with Katie and the colleagues to put that budget together. It'll be another responsible budget, just like the first three.
There's been such fevered speculation on there being an April election, and I've reported that it was seriously looked at by the PM, and probably still is to some extent. If the PM delayed his call, could it look like the government was behind in the internal polling? You had a more favourable poll today after a couple of not great ones. Could it look like you're trying to find a way back? You're looking for extra time?
I think I'll leave the kind of analysis and the commentary of all of that to yourself and your colleagues in the press gallery. You know, that's not really my job to comb through the kind of motivations for different election timings and different dates. And as you know, my job is to obsess over numbers in the economy, not numbers in the polls. Yes, there was a poll that had the gap narrowing between the major parties today, but really not my focus. What we've seen in the last couple of weeks in the economy when it comes to the numbers is we've seen inflation coming down. We've seen unemployment very low. Interest rates have been cut. We've seen confidence come up because of that interest rate cut. That'll mean another $5 billion or so pumping into the economy over the course of the next year, and it will take pressure off people. And that's really my focus, not the political consequences of that.
Well, there's an announcement today on urgent care clinics. It seems spending on health is very much a theme of what Labor will be taking to an election. Why is that?
Well, because if you provide more bulk billing doctors in more suburbs and towns, it means less stress for families and it means less pressure on household budgets. And when we take that pressure off family budgets, we also take pressure off emergency departments. And so that's what this announcement is all about today. We've already built 87 urgent care clinics. We'll build another 50 Medicare urgent care clinics. It'll cost $644 million, every cent of that already accounted for in the mid-year budget update towards the end of last year. Now, these urgent care clinics will be cut if Peter Dutton wins the election, and that goes to a really important choice for people to weigh up whenever the election is. We've got a Prime Minister, a Labor Prime Minister in Anthony Albanese strengthening Medicare, and we've got Peter Dutton who tried to strangle Medicare when he was the Health Minister. And so this is among the most important choices that we will ask people to make when the election is called. The Prime Minister strengthening Medicare or Peter Dutton who tried to strangle it when he was the Health Minister.
But did Peter Dutton take some wind out of your sails by immediately matching that Medicare promise last week?
No, I don't think so, and frankly, I don't believe him. You know, before the 2013 election, they said they wouldn't touch Medicare. After the election, when Peter Dutton was the Health Minister, he tried to impose a GP tax, which would have undermined universal Medicare in our country. And so Medicare is not safe in Peter Dutton's hands. Medicare is not safe from the guy who, when he was Health Minister, tried to destroy universal Medicare. He tried to do it before, he will try and do it again. And I'll tell you why we know that's the case. You cannot find the $600 billion he needs for his nuclear reactors without coming after Medicare and without coming after pensions and housing and veterans and all of these other areas of spending. And so the election will be a referendum on Medicare. Under Labor, more bulk billing doctors, less pressure on household budgets, more urgent care clinics, versus the guy who tried to strangle Medicare when he was the Health Minister, who will cut Medicare to pay for nuclear reactors.
Well, you might want a referendum on Medicare. He might want a car key election. What's your reaction to Peter Dutton's announcement today? He's going to spend $3 billion on fighter jets if elected.
Well, a couple of things about that. I mean, first of all, I've seen the headlines, but I haven't seen the detail. This is the same guy who hasn't signed up to the $50 billion in extra investment that we have found in a responsible budget to invest in our capability in defence. So he should tell us where this $3 billion is coming from. He hasn't been able to do that. I don't think he's thought through what it means for the personnel part of the story, the broader costs of this beyond the planes themselves. We have already delivered 72 F-35s. That is already the case. We've got a big fleet, a big squadron of F-35s, and they are important. They're a very important piece of kit. But we don't know where he'll find this $3 billion from, and he should tell us all about that. Now, more broadly, you can't find extra billions for planes or for longer lunches for bosses or for nuclear reactors without coming after Medicare. And so, again, you know, whether it's this announcement that he's made today, this press release he's put out without having thought it through, what all of this means is we've got secret costs, and that means secret cuts, and that means Medicare's not safe.
It seems this promise is linked to the Chinese ships around our coastline, these live firing exercises. Do you condemn the actions of the Chinese, and what do you think is motivating the Chinese government and Chinese Navy here? Because it's not exactly helping your government ahead of an election, is it?
Yeah, I obviously can't speak to the motivations of another country's government. We have made it very clear publicly that more notice would have been appropriate when it comes to these exercises. Our Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, has relayed that directly to China's Foreign Minister as well, as I understand it. We continue to track and monitor these ships. And so the Deputy Prime Minister, the Prime Minister and others have gone to this at some length. These are very important issues. I don't pretend otherwise, but my focus has been largely on the economy.
Well, let's turn to the freezing of beer excise decision. This is something that I've been told you've always opposed. Is this a bid for the mail vote ahead of the election? Have you personally been rolled on this? And you took the extraordinary step at the end of January of threatening to fine pubs and brewers if they said excise was pushing up prices. Why did you do that? Do you stand by that?
Well, I support this 100%, because this is a little bit of help for pubs and for brewers. These are really important small businesses, often in suburbs and towns. They're very important small businesses. So this is some modest relief provided at an affordable cost in a very responsible way, which recognises the pressures that pubs and clubs and often local communities are under. The announcement that we made yesterday, the Prime Minister and I made yesterday, is not inconsistent with the work that I asked for from the ACCC. That was really just making sure that when the excise changes, as it has for decades now, we haven't changed the excise arrangements apart from freezing them yesterday, to make sure that when that happens, we aren't seeing much bigger price rises blamed on the federal government. And so asking the ACCC to make sure that that's not happening is entirely consistent with the 2-year freeze on the excise that the PM and I announced yesterday. And again, that's about providing a bit of relief to pubs and brewers and drinkers. We recognise it's a modest amount of money. It comes at a modest cost, and that's because we have to do all of these things in the most responsible way we can.
Treasurer, let me ask now about your recent US trip to see the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. What was discussed? What hope do you have from those meetings of getting an exemption from the US's steel tariffs and other tariffs, or is that looking difficult at this point?
Oh, we're under no illusions. It will be hard. I think, as Penny Wong has pointed out before, this is a big hill to climb. It will be harder this time than last time. But I was really grateful to Secretary Bessent and also Director Hassett for making the time for us to run through the arguments for an Australian exemption. We had a very positive and productive, very constructive conversation in Washington, DC. I was able to make the case, and our case is compelling when it comes to why Australia is different than some of the other countries which have been the big focus of the Trump administration. So we had a very productive conversation. We were able to make the case. They heard us out. You know, I'm not going to take any outcome for granted or try and make predictions or preempt where the Americans might land.
Did the Treasury Secretary tell you it was a tough ask? And is there anything Australia can offer in return to try to get the exemption?
No, he didn't put it in those terms, but we've got a good case to make, as I said. The Americans run a trade surplus with us. They get tariff-free access to our markets. We've got hundreds of billions of dollars of superannuation investment flowing into their country. We pay our own way on defence. Defence spending has gone up substantially under our government. We've got 36 of the 50 minerals that they consider to be critical. And so we've got a lot to offer. This is a relationship of mutual economic benefit. It is absolutely chock full with opportunity. And so we were able to have that conversation. I think everybody recognises at the end of the day this is a call for President Trump to make, and he will make that call. My job was not to conclude those discussions. It was to broaden them and to inform them. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have done so. And it augurs well for the relationship that I've been through DC talking to my counterpart Penny Wong has, Richard Marles has, and the Prime Minister had that productive conversation directly with President Trump as well. That augurs well, but we don't take any outcome for granted.
What did you make of the way Donald Trump and JD Vance treated the Ukrainian president yesterday?
Well, they speak for the American government's position, and I speak for the Australian government's position. You know, I think President Zelensky is a hero. You know, he is the democratically elected leader of a very courageous country standing up to Russian brutality and aggression. And so the Australian position is unequivocal. You know, we support the leader and the people of Ukraine, and we salute their really remarkable bravery.
It's a difficult position for Australia, though, isn't it? Because Donald Trump clearly doesn't see him as a hero.
Well, again, that's a matter for President Trump. Obviously, I've watched the footage of the meeting at the White House, as most of the world probably has by now. President Trump and Vice President Vance, they speak for the Americans. I speak for the Australian position. The Australian position is unequivocal. You know, we couldn't be more supportive of President Zelensky and his people. This is a brave and courageous country. It has a democratically elected leader who will go down in history for the bravery of his position and his leadership, and we support him and his country without reservation.
Could we see further military aid in the budget for Ukraine?
Oh, we keep that under constant review. From memory, there's already about $1.5 billion of support for Ukraine. I think $1.3 billion of that from memory as military assistance. And so we've been very enthusiastic, very willing supporters of the military effort in Ukraine. We keep that under constant review. When we can afford to do that, given all of our other priorities in the budget, we try and do what we can.
It's been widely speculated that you will roll over the rebates, continue the rebates on everyone's energy bills for another year. You've certainly not denied that's the case. Are you considering increasing the size of that $300 annual payment?
Well, we haven't finished the budget yet, and we've made it very clear every time I'm asked about that providing cost of living relief has been a big part of the first three budgets, and if we can afford it, it will be part of the fourth budget as well. And that really goes to the difference between the two parties. You know, we've got inflation down, we've rolled out cost of living relief, we're strengthening Medicare, we're building Australia's future. Our opponents, Peter Dutton, the Liberal and National parties, they oppose our cost of living help. Australians would be much worse off if they had their way. They'd be much worse off still if they win. And that's because their economic plan is lower wages for workers, longer lunches for bosses, and nuclear reactors, which would push electricity prices up. Now, I hope, Andrew, that the economy is the central focus of the election campaign whenever it's called. And that's why I wanted to do this today, Andrew. I challenge the Shadow Treasurer to a series of debates about the economy. You know, he has had almost 3 years now and he still has no costed, coherent or credible economic policies. And so I'd be happy to debate Angus Taylor every week of the campaign, frankly, if we could find a neutral and appropriate venue. But I would have thought at least 3 formal debates between the Treasurer and the Shadow Treasurer would be appropriate, given how important the economy is, given the progress we've made together as Australians, and given the risk that Peter Dutton and Angus Taylor pose to all of that. So if Angus Taylor wants people to take him seriously on the economy, he will accept my challenge today. At least 3 formal Treasury debates between now and election day. I would do more than that if that were possible, but he should sign up to at least 3 today.
Just briefly, are you thinking on Sky News as part of those debates?
I'd be very happy to do that, Andrew, if we can find an appropriately neutral venue for these really important debates. I would certainly show up on Sky and on other channels in other forums. But let's make the economy the central focus of this campaign. Our political opponents, they've got secret costs and secret cuts. They want conflict and culture wars. This Albanese government's maintained its focus on the cost of living throughout. And because of that, we've got inflation down, we've got wages up, unemployment is low, we've paid down a heap of Liberal debt and interest rates have started to come down as well. That's why the Liberal Party and Peter Dutton and Angus Taylor don't like talking about the economy. The Australian people need and deserve the economy to be the central focus of this campaign, and how we pay for things like strengthening Medicare and building urgent care clinics. And so I would have thought at least 3 debates between myself and Angus Taylor would be appropriate. I'd happily do more, and I'd happily show up to Sky and make that one of those debates.
All right, we'll hold you to that and try and get him. Now, Treasurer, we're out of time really, but there was a long profile of you in the Australian Financial Review which spoke about harsh words. This was last Friday. This was published. You allegedly had, I should say, I'm going to ask you about them, with the former Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe and current Governor Michelle Bullock. In relation to Mr Lowe, it said that about 2 years ago you accused him of ignoring the pain that rate rises were having on regular people, like those in Logan, your home town where you're standing now, its home suburb, and that you noted that Mr Lowe had never been there, that he lacked empathy and that he needed to get outside Sydney's affluent eastern suburbs where he lived. Did that conversation occur? Is that an accurate account?
No, it's not. It didn't occur in that form at all. Unfortunately, that piece in the Financial Review was full of factual errors. You know, I didn't do an interview for that piece. The photos are from a couple of years ago from memory, and unfortunately there's a number of errors in that piece, including the characterisation of that conversation. Now, I'm reluctant to go into the detail of those conversations I've had with the last 2 governors of the Reserve Bank. I think Australians do understand that I'm very focused on the pressure they're under. It's not unusual for me to raise that, but the details of that conversation are not quite right. Similarly with Governor Bullock, you know, nobody who's in the discussions I've had with Governor Bullock would describe them the way that they were described in that piece. I think everybody knows how respectful I am of her independence, the independence of the Reserve Bank as an institution, which I tried to strengthen, not weaken. And people know how much I value those very regular conversations I can have.
Just on
very
that,
productive conversations I have with Governor Bullock.
Treasurer, just on that, the central premise was that an RBA statement had talked about an impact on demand of budget outcomes, state and federal, basically code for too much spending, and that you are reported to have rung Michelle Bullock and registered your displeasure. Did that happen?
No, I mean, we speak about these matters all of the time, all of the issues in the economy, not just that one. We have a regular structured conversation, and we have informal conversations initiated by either of us at different times. But the way that those conversations were characterised in that piece, unfortunately, for all involved, were not right. We have very respectful, very constructive conversations about all parts of her considerations and my considerations. The Governor has said publicly before that public spending is not the main game. She's pointed out, as I have, that we've got the same objective here to get inflation down without seeing the spike in unemployment that we've seen in other countries. But we've got different responsibilities. We're very, very respectful of each other. That piece did not convey that, as far as I'm concerned, as accurately as it could have.
And finally and briefly, Treasurer, the Opposition Leader Peter Dutton isn't ruling out promising tax cuts at the election. Have you got Treasury to do any work on potential tax cut options in case either A, you want to promise it, or B, you want to match a promise?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm not going to go into the kind of budget deliberations and all the rest of it. You would know that our focus is on rolling out the cost of living relief we already budgeted for, the tax cuts that we've already budgeted for, which Peter Dutton opposed. It would be strange for Peter Dutton to oppose a tax cut for every taxpayer on the one hand and then announce new tax cuts on the other hand. Our focus is on rolling out the tax cuts we've already budgeted for. We've said on a number of occasions, I think including earlier today in our discussion, Andrew, which I'm grateful for, the hints for the fourth budget will be in the first three. Cost of living help if we can afford it, trying to clean up the mess that we inherited of the budget, investing in the future so that we can build Australia's future. That's what we're all about. That's what the election campaign will be all about as well, because by managing the budget as responsibly as we have, we've been able to find room to strengthen Medicare and to build more urgent care clinics in our suburbs and towns. More urgent care clinics means less stress on families, it means less pressure on household budgets, and that's what we're all about.
Treasurer, thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate it, Andrew. All the best.